Hello, welcome back. My name's Daniel Gormally, or Danny Gormally. Who cares? What does it matter? And today I want to show you a game of a friend of mine who's been accused of cheating on chess.com. And it's a correspondence game, and this guy's been accused of cheating by an opponent. So Phil Welsh is a local player, and he has been accused of cheating. Very, very serious allegations. So we're going to examine the game and see whether this is correct or not. But before we do, I did promise from the last video that we would look at Zoe's game with an engine and see how accurate my analysis of that game was. Right? So let's have a look at that game again. And we can see the engine bar is running below. By the way, I examined this game with a student of mine, and he did suggest to move Queen b4, which actually is a reasonable alternative, I think, certainly from a practical point of view. You're attacking the pawn on b2, and you're also threatening to bring the knight into e4 sometimes, or the knight into d5. So, interesting option. Anyway, let's not just... I want to go through this game fairly quickly. We get on to the other game. Yeah, and... yeah, so this was one of the first critical moments. And white played a move bishop h3. Actually, I might turn the computer off because it's kind of giving the answer. So let's turn the computer off. We can always turn it back on again later. But yeah, in this position, the computer was recommending to move knight to b6. So you may have already seen that below. Interesting choice by the engine. And this position is black from the black perspective. It kind of reminds me of something that Nakamura. I've seen Nakamura kind of play these kind of positions because I know he has played Scandinavian in the past. I actually had a game with him in Gibraltar in 2005. I was on the white side of Scandinavian. Yeah, he's played the Scandinavian, and I think this kind of move that Nakamura would play, it's an active move. You're intending to bring the knight into d5. You're not necessarily afraid of ghosts. I think as a calculator, it's very important not to be afraid of ghosts. Right? This move I didn't consider when we analysed the game without a computer. So the move I considered was castles, which is actually a fairly reasonable alternative, certainly from a practical point of view. But then white, apparently, according to the engine, white then plays the move g4, which is quite a threatening move, right? And sometimes you can even sack a pawn. You know, if black goes knight d5, maybe, what does white play here? What does the engine say? Again, let's check with the engine. It says you take. Yeah, this is interesting. You take, and then you go g5, right? And at first that looks ridiculous, right? You know, why can't I take that? But the problem is you're then opening lines. And there's a stunning idea, which is to go knight e6. Wow. So the engine, I mean, you know, I think analyzing with computers can be harmful because if all you use is computers, you're not engaging your own brain, right? And I think that's why my own chess went into a slump for many, many years. That I wasn't using my brain. I was just using the engine. And I'd get stuck on a position. I'm like, wow, what does the engine say? What does the engine say? You fall in love with the engine, right? Which is great. But the thing is, I think a line like this, you can legitimately find without the engine, right? It's not actually that difficult. And I think you probably get more enjoyment out of it. You probably get more improvement out of it if you actually start finding these lines without an engine. You know, it's a beautiful line, don't get me wrong, but I think it is findable for a human being. So yeah, for example, one of the ideas is if I take here, you have not queen takes, which looks like a legitimate try because of rook f7 actually, which is a good response, defends d7, but bishop takes. And now if I go to h8, wow, we've got a stunning win with this. And very, very nice idea. Queen d3. You have to go to f6 pretty much, unless you play rook f5. Queen f5. Yeah, it all kind of starts to glue together, right? Bishop g5, and that's winning. But again, I feel like it's a line you can find without the engine. You don't necessarily need the engine on, right? But anyway, instead of castles, knight b6 was given by the engine. Now, if white carries on with a plunge, this doesn't really work out that well. Queen d7. So knight b6 was a legitimate alternative. But black played knight f8, which I felt like was a reaction move. You know, you're reacting to the threats. It's a passive move. You don't generally want to make passive moves in the opening when you're trying to. The opening is often about who wins the initiative. You know, sometimes if you're from a black perspective, the best way to defend against a potential white attack is to try and wrest the initiative yourself. If you play moves like knight f8, you're effectively saying, look, I respect you. I'm just going to go into defensive, roll up like a hedgehog. It actually was impressive the way Zoe kind of tried to break down that attack, that defensive. Yeah, with this move d5, which I thought was a very, very nice move. And I said, probably rightly, that queen c6 was the best try. But the computer still prefers white. Just feels like the initiative is more important than the pawn. I think rook c8 was a bit of a mistake. Yeah, and after this, so this was also an interesting moment because black played knight g6, which was a clear error. So at first the computer thinks knight d7 is fine for black, but then on a higher depth it starts to realise this is no good. I think you take on g7. I think you come back to g8 now. If from memory you now go bishop e5, right? Or is that wrong? Maybe that's wrong because surely there's knight e5 anyway, right? What am I missing? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, he likes bishop e5 a lot. He thinks that that's borderline winning, which is kind of surprising, right? But I think slightly different because in the game the black king was on f8. So this rook g6, and also the pawn was on h5, which is quite a big difference because black had this bailout move with bishop g5. So now you have to play awkward moves which don't make a lot of logical sense, like rook g6. I mean, who's finding rook g6, right? You're blocking in the bishop. You know, and if you now go for this kind of stuff, this is like crunch time, right? It's kind of similar to what happened in the game, but big difference because there's no pawn on h5 and no king on f8. So, yeah, these tiny little these tiny little differences that don't seem to matter actually matter a lot. So going back to the game, yeah, in this position after knight g6, h5, knight back to f8. Yeah, so I suggested in the commentary to move f4, and actually the computer agreed with me. The f4 was actually very strong. And sometimes I think you can try too hard, right? You look at black's position, it's a bit of a mess. You've got no development, the rook on h8, you know, yes, you can still go knight d7 and castle, but knight d7 is just going to run into bishop g7, right? So not a good position for black. Also knight d7, f5 is another option. So the computer, that was a good thing. You know, I think if you annotate games and you find that the computer agrees with you on a number of occasions, that's a positive sign. It shows you're analysing well. But I still recommend you do your own analysis first rather than going over with the engine. In fact, the more of your own analysis you can do without the engine, the better. You know, if you've got the patience to sit there and spend several hours on the game looking for resources, you know, like for example on that last try with knight d7, understand that bishop g7 and bishop e5, and understand that without the computer, that is you know, that I think is an important thing. But in the game, White took, which was fine, but this is a very serious mistake. And I actually said that on the thing that I felt bishop f8 was wrong, and the computer agrees with me. It thinks bishop h6 is borderline winning for white. If you take, I can even go bishop f5 actually, because there's always this pin. Or bishop g4, which I also just suggested is good for white. So I think that was a very serious mistake. Bishop f8 and rook e5. And the computer actually already says that after bishop f6, black is winning. Rook g3 was played as well, which was also good. So another important moment, I said in the analysis that queen c7 was maybe the best move, just to prevent queen e5. The computer agrees with me. It thinks that queen c7 is winning. So again, maybe I understand these positions because they're kind of pure tactics, right? Pieces, I'm good in those kind of tactical positions. It's positions where you have to apply a bit of strategy that seem to come unraveled. But this position, maybe I had a fairly reasonable understanding. A lot of it is very straightforward, White's creating these threats and black has to counter against that. But yeah, for example, after queen c7, after queen c7 in this position, if white tries this, I analyze this with my student. Rook d1 is a reasonable try because you're threatening rook d7 check. But the problem is I'd simply go bishop f5 and you have nothing. You can't go knight d5 because of queen c2. I can't read all the entry squares, so the attack looks scary. Always think when you're facing an attack, don't panic. Try and work it out move by move. Because it's very easy to panic here as black. Your king's right out in the open. The white king looks fairly safe, which it is for the time being. But if white has nothing, he's got nothing. And that's the case here. The computer says that black is winning. But in the game, queen d7 was played, which is also okay. Queen e5. Bishop g8. And the draw was offered at this point. Rook d6. Queen f7. Another interesting moment. Now, I said that the old Zoe would have taken g3. But in fact, actually, that was the correct move. Because after rook takes c3, rather than resigning because if you take, I've got queen a2, snap mate. I went through this with a student of mine. And he suggested the move rook e6, which is actually the top line of the engine. And I believe it ends up in some kind of equal position. But tough to see, right? But yeah, it shows again that you need, when you calculate, you need to take the variation and move further. And I kind of shut it off after rook c3. Possibly Zoe did as well. So it's a good sign that my student managed to see that a little bit further and thought, actually, it's not at the end of the game. I've got rook e6, and white has enough activity to hold the position now. It's got dangerous threats like queen d6 or rook e8 potentially, or just take the rook, of course. Very, very difficult game. But white played b3, which I think from a practical point of view was not a bad decision, actually, even though the computer now says that black is winning. Over the board, this is tough to play for black. He should have taken on f3, which I kind of alluded to in the original commentary. He didn't take on f3, he played bishop f4, and I was right in suggesting that bishop f4 was the fatal mistake. So I felt like I got this game fairly spot on. And rook f3 would have just been winning for black. There's not actually enough there for white to really, get your teeth into. Moves like knight e4 might just run into rook f1, for example, or bishop f4 first, or even bishop e7. What are you doing, sort of thing. Even move like queen f5 might even be possible after knight e4. Yeah, I think in general black will win eventually. But still, shorter time, I mean, anything's possible. Certainly, if I was white there, even after rook f3, I feel like I'm assuming at this point of the game, both players were shorter time. Any result is possible. But in the game, ended fairly abruptly. and Zoe won the game. Fairly impressive calculation. Yeah, she's quite dangerous, I think, when she gets towards the end of the game. She's a bit of a finisher. So, yeah, overall kind of mixed bag that game. Both from the analytical point of view and also the game itself. But I felt like I did a fairly good job of annotating that. So if we now move on to... oh, hang on, sorry. So this is the game where Phil was accused of cheating. He is independent 1705 in this game. His opponent is Oliver Hauser. Now, looking at his chess.com profile, he looks a little bit like his kind of avatar was like the Walter White character, the Heisenberg character from Breaking Bad. So I don't know, I presume he's a fan of Breaking Bad. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over this game with an engine and see how accurate White was and when he actually left theory. So already G6 is a slightly unusual choice. Okay, G3 was played. That isn't one of the top moves by the engine. Bishop G2. So often the way I analyze it, you know, if I feel like somebody is cheating, you look at how often they hit the top move of the engine, right? Now, Bishop G2 looks kind of normal, right? I mean, it probably is still following some kind of theory, but normally if you play the close Sicilian, you don't have the knight on F3. So it's already slightly unusual. But okay, so far White has not done a great job of hitting the top move of the engine. He played the move D4, also not the top move of the engine. And it's already saying that Black is better. So this doesn't suggest to me somebody who's using an engine. Bishop G4 is a good response. Yeah, which is typical in Sicilians. When White has played D4, you're fighting for control over the D4 square. And yeah, a move like D5, I'm just going to meet with knight D4, right? And if you take on C5, yeah, you can take this, but I just take back, and I've still got control over D4. So already I think White's gone slightly wrong. So this doesn't suggest to me at first glance like it's like an engine game, but let's carry on. Yeah, Queen D4. And White played a move Queen D3. That was the best move. So bear in mind this is a correspondence game, right? So the players have, I'm not sure how many days it is. I don't think they've got like weeks, to, you know. So correspondence chess, you know, I'm not sure when it originated, but the idea was that certain players they don't really feel like playing over the board tournaments that much, or they enjoy playing correspondence chess. They enjoy having a bit of extra time to think about the move without the stress of the ticking clock. I mean, to give you an example, Jonathan Penrose became one of the strongest players of correspondence chess. And he was a very strong player over the boards. He was something like a 9-time British champion, 10-time British champion. A very impressive player. He beat Tao in an Olympiad, I believe, in something like 1961, 1962. So a very strong player, of course. I don't think he would compare with people like Michael Adams around today, right? He'd probably be around about my strength if he was playing, maybe even weaker than me, actually. But he was still a pretty decent player. He never achieved a GM title over the board, but I think he got given it retrospectively while he was still alive. He died a few years ago. He's actually the brother of Sir Roger Penrose, who's an authority on black holes, and also did a lot of work with Stephen Hawking. Very, very, obviously very bright guy. So, you know, brilliance, intellectual brilliance runs in the family, you could say. Anyway, he did a lot of correspondence chess, and I believe he became correspondence world champion. There was another guy called G. Nisis or something like Gennady Nisis or something, like a Russian player. And I believe he was also quite well known in the correspondence world. But, you know, going back to like the late 1980s, 1990s, computers started to come into correspondence chess. And clearly that's possibly gone into online chess as well. It's probably reasonable to assume that more people are using computers in correspondence games than they are in blitz games, even though there's also quite a lot of cheating. Maybe people feel like with correspondence chess it's not cheating. But anyway, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. Let's continue. So white did play b3 after the move rook c8. That looks like natural response. Queen d7 was played. Bishop, the top move according to the engine is bishop e3. Actually, bishop d2 is now coming up as one of the top three choices. So bishop d2 was played by Phil. A6, as your computer quite likes 94. Rook c1. Is rook c1 one of the top choices? It is actually number one choice. No, it's dipped. It's now saying rook a. No, it's come back up again. It's now saying rook ac1 is the top choice. Yeah. Well, again, natural move doesn't obviously show that somebody's cheating. Black played knight, bishop h3, which looks like a natural move, trying to exchange off the bishop. Bishop g5 was played. And that isn't given as one of the top moves. It's saying move the rook on f1, either to d1 or e1. They're by far the top moves. So bishop g5 is not given as like a great move. Rook c5, good response by black. White took. White took on, no, he played knight d5, which again, yeah, that's one of the top moves, one of the two top moves. The other is to take on h3, but white went knight d5. Bishop, yeah, that's a bad move though. I mean, you should take on g2, right? That's clearly a bad move because you're hanging e7. So Phil, obviously, he's going to win that, right? He's going to see that, especially his correspondence game. So I don't think seeing that combination of winning the pawn is necessarily. But how? Okay, now he's achieved the winning position. According to the engine, it's saying plus 3.0, plus 3.4 of a pawn. How good was he at finishing this off? He went 95. That is actually, according to the engine, that's the top move, right? Black played f5. And now the top move is rook. It's taken on f5, but they're all given as winning, right? So there's probably many moves that are winning. Like taking on f5 is the top move. There's also rook fd1 is winning. He went knight f4, which is not the top move, but good enough. It's still winning. F takes. The top move is now queen e4, but that's kind of obvious, right? Or maybe queen d6 is another option. Queen e4, yeah. That smacks of desperation. I mean, given that the exchange, white took with a pawn. That's interesting. Yeah, he could also take with a queen, but maybe after rook f5, he was afraid that he didn't see this idea of going g4. Because if you don't see g4, then you worry about. I mean, you could legitimately probably go queen f4, rook h5, and just move the rook like rook e1, because queen h2 is not the end of the game, right? It's not checkmate. I could move the king to f1. But you don't really want to allow that. And black has moves like bishop e5. No, not bishop e5 because of queen f8, mate, but like rook f5, right? Well, rook f5 is rook e8. So probably you'd have to play something like h6. But clearly, you know, or maybe queen h3 would be played by black because then the king would have to go to e2 and then that would cut out like rook e8 ideas. But if you find queen f4, rook h5, g4 is basically winning because like here you have h3. And then h5, I would just go queen g3. And any kind of endgame is just going to be... Oh no, the queen h3, there's a bishop d4, right? And maybe h5, I just go like rook e1. It feels completely winning. Also, maybe even queen d6 is another option. No, queen d6 you can take. Yeah, because I'm thinking queen g3, bishop d4 is a bit annoying. because then king h1 runs into queen g3. But the way he played it, he took with a pawn. And after rook h5, you can now meet with the move queen e8, actually. So you have to give your king some space. Then he just took the pawn. Is that the top move? That's the top move, right? Rook c7. White one, rook fe1. That's one of the top moves, yeah. The top two moves. Bishop e5. Rook e3. Is that the top move? That's the top move. Well, that's pure desperation. Now, at this point, you could probably resign the game. But I think he realized. I think Black realized the game was up, and he resigned the game at this point. So my verdict on this is that it's inconclusive. I mean, I don't think that White needs to do anything special to win the game. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Phil, I know he probably follows my channel, so he's probably can leave his comment below. I'm not sure quite how strong Phil is over the board. So it's difficult for me to say. I think it might be about a 180 ECF player, but I'm not sure. But I would say that a player of that level would probably be able to play this game in a correspondence game without needing to have access to the computer. His opponent accused him of cheating. You know, again, I would need to see more of Phil's online games, correspondence games, to have an absolute say with certainty that he's not cheating. But I don't think there's enough evidence from that game to suggest that he is cheating either. So it's kind of inconclusive. You like to give people the benefit of the doubt. By the way, I've been getting into a lot of issues. I tried to defend Simon. Simon Williams has been attacked online by various people due to this court case that had concluded not in his favour. But I noticed there were a few people in forums that were attacking him and so on. So I tried to stand up for Simon because I feel like he has done a lot for chess, and people know him personally know that he's quite a generous character. You know, I've been friends with Simon for probably since 1996, really. 1995, 1996. I first met him actually in 1996, yeah, Nottingham British Championships. And he's probably been through a lot of the same experiences I have, and you know, in terms of not having much money. But there were people attacking him. I felt it was going too far. So I asked Chessable to lock the thread, because I just felt I was constantly attacking. And I feel like a few of the people on there should be ashamed of themselves. I feel like they've lost the plot. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that what happened was a great thing. Obviously, it wasn't. But just the way that they attack, you know, the nasty comments towards me. It's not. I mean, I can understand the way that you might leave nasty comments. I don't agree with it, but you know, a lot of people attack like footballers, tennis players online. But the thing with chess is everybody knows each other, and most chess players don't have any money. But yeah, people who are reasonably well known, like myself and Simon, we often get attacked online. We get trolled, which I think is very sad because you know, you must know that chess players in general don't have much money. And I'm not using that as an excuse for bad behaviour, but all I'm saying is, you know, it's like there was like nasty comments about live with my dad and you know live on a council estate, and I thought, you know, why am I even interacting with these people? They're just like nasty trolls, basically. Got nothing better to do than sit there in the evening attacking other people online. You really need to take a look at yourself and say, look, what has happened to my life that I've got nothing better to do than attack people online. You know, it's pretty sad in my opinion. But I don't really want to get into this kind of discussion, yeah, because it can turn toxic, it can turn quite nasty. So I'd rather just leave it there. And in future, I'm going to probably try and avoid these kind of forums. But at the same time, these people must understand that if they're going to attack people openly in a kind of a witch hunt kind of fashion, there's some kind of limelight that can also be turned on them. And, you know, one of the people was apparently claims to be involved in law enforcement or something. And yeah, I thought this guy is not leaving a very good. He's not really a shining example of law enforcement. If all he's doing is trolling people, attacking people online, you know, these people are supposed to be an example to the rest of society, not sitting there on forums trolling people. You know. So anyway, that's my opinion on the whole thing. That was my opinion on the Phil Welsh game. I'll be interested to know what you think. I don't think he was. Well, I wouldn't say I know for certain that he's not cheating because I don't trust anyone. I wouldn't even trust my dog. You know, if I had a dog, well, we've got kind of like a family dog here, but it's not really my dog. But but yeah, I don't really trust anyone. But I don't think there's enough evidence from that game to suggest that Phil Welsh was cheating. So that is my opinion about that particular game. But obviously, we will wait. Maybe Phil can send me more of his games that I can look at. But obviously, you know, you might not cheat in another game, but you might decide I'm going to cheat for this particular game. So even if you have games where they don't look suspicious, this is a problem with online chess, in my opinion, is that there's no way of telling for certain if somebody is cheating or not. Over the board is the same problem. It's much harder to actually cheat over the board. It's a much more difficult operation. If you want to cheat in a correspondence game online, you obviously can without any difficulty. The only problem is you might get shut down by the site, right? Anyway, I would recommend that you send me your games. If you've got any interesting games you want to show me on this channel, please do so. I will look at them for you, examine the games, and hopefully give you some advice going forward. Thank you very much. Goodbye.